Hey everyone, you guys really want to take a deep dive into what's going on with skilled immigration in Canada. And, well, there's a report that just came out saying that skilled newcomers are leaving, in record numbers. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. We've got some excerpts from a video on the Canada Immigration YouTube channel. And we want to figure out together why this is happening and what it all means for Canada's future.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I mean, Canada has always kind of been this big magnet for immigrants. But now we're seeing this trend of skilled folks actually packing up and leaving.
Yeah, and it's not just like a couple of people here and there. It's like a growing trend across the whole country.
Yeah, and that's what's really concerning. I mean, it's not just any immigrants. These are people that were chosen specifically because of their skills and their potential to contribute to Canada's economy, right? So if they're leaving, it makes you wonder if Canada's even going to be able to keep up with the global talent pool. And maintain the economic growth it's known for.
Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty. What does this exodus actually look like?
Well, the report doesn't really give us any hard numbers, but it does point out some really interesting patterns. One of the most striking is the difference between French and English-speaking immigrants in terms of how long they stay in Canada.
Oh, wow. I'm really curious about those differences. Tell me more.
Sure. So the report says that, get this, 35% of French-speaking immigrants end up leaving Canada, compared to only 20% of English-speaking immigrants. That's a pretty big difference, don't you think?
Yeah, that's a huge gap. Do you think maybe that's like a sign of bigger integration issues for French-speaking newcomers?
It definitely raises some important questions, like, are there specific barriers for them in certain professions or industries? Are there cultural things that maybe aren't being addressed? It definitely highlights that we need a more tailored approach for each group, something that recognizes that everyone has different needs.
Yeah, totally. It's like thinking everyone's going to do well in the exact same environment. But in reality, people need different kinds of support to really thrive.
Exactly. And it's not just about language either. The report also highlights some geographical trends too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'm picturing all those big cities like Toronto and Vancouver. They seem like the first place that lots of newcomers would go.
You're right on the money. Those big Canadian cities are usually the first stop for a lot of immigrants. I mean, they offer that initial sense of, familiarity. Plus, there's these big communities and diverse job markets.
But it sounds like they're not actually keeping these skilled professionals for very long.
Nope, that's right. The report says that these big cities have huge turnover rates. People are only staying for a few years before moving on.
You know what? That's actually happening to some of my friends right now. They moved to Toronto a while back, and they're already thinking of moving to a smaller town. Maybe they're part of this bigger trend too.
It's wild how those individual stories line up with these national trends, right? I mean, it really makes you think maybe big cities are good for the initial attraction, but then there's something that's pushing these skilled immigrants to go look for opportunities in other places.
So if they're leaving the big cities, where are they going? Is there any region in Canada that's actually doing a good job of keeping skilled immigrants?
Well, the report talks about Atlantic Canada, and it's kind of mixed bag, to be honest. On one hand, immigrants there are more likely to leave within their first 7 years. But on the other hand, the people who DO stay longer tend to settle there permanently.
That is pretty interesting. What do you think that means?
Maybe it means that while Atlantic Canada might be a bit harder to adapt to at first, it's actually really good at creating that sense of long-term belonging, Maybe it's the slower pace of life, or the strong community ties, or maybe it's those unique opportunities that just take a little longer to pop up.
Yeah, it definitely shows that each region has its own way of attracting and keeping skilled immigrants. So we've got different retention rates based on language and based on geography. But I think the biggest question is still, why are these skilled immigrants choosing to leave Canada in the first place?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And to try to figure that out, the report looked at a bunch of past research, particularly a study by the Institute for Canadian Citizenship. And it found some pretty interesting stuff.
Okay, I'm all ears. What'd they find?
One of the biggest things they found was housing affordability.
Good old housing crunch. It's like the talk of the town these days. But how does that affect skilled immigrants specifically?
Well, think about it. You arrive in this brand new country. You're ready to use your skills and contribute, but then, bam, you're hit with these crazy high housing costs. Makes you think twice about staying, doesn't it?
Totally. I never thought about it like that.
And it's kind of ironic, right? People always blame immigrants for high housing prices.
Yeah.
But they're victims of it too.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's not fair to just blame immigrants for the whole problem. they're actually facing the same pressures as everyone else, and sometimes even worse.
Exactly. And on top of housing, there's another factor. The world is changing.
So you're saying Canada isn't the only option for these people anymore?
Exactly. Canada is now attracting these highly skilled immigrants. And these people have options all over the world. They're in demand in Europe, Asia, even back in their home countries.
So Canada actually has competition now. It can't just assume that all these talented people are going to flock here and stay forever.
Nope, that's the reality. Canada needs to step up its game if it wants to keep them. Speaking of stepping up, the report talks about this guy, Daniel Bernhard. He's the CEO of the Institute for Canadian Citizenship, and he's got a really interesting argument.
Okay, I'm curious. What does he say?
Well, he thinks that Canada needs to completely change its approach to immigration. He says it's not enough to just recruit skilled workers. We also need to focus on keeping them here. He says just opening the door and saying, "Come on in," isn't going to cut it.
Yeah, it's like inviting someone to a party, but then not making them feel welcome once they get there.
Exactly. Bernhard says Canada needs to create an environment where these newcomers can actually thrive, build a real life for themselves, not just be a temporary fix for a labor shortage.
Yeah, that seems like a much better approach. But what would that actually look like? What kind of changes are we talking about?
So Bernhard's big thing is that there's no magic bullet solution, He's all about coming up with tailored approaches for different regions and communities. So for example, Atlantic Canada. We talked about how their retention rate is lower at first, but then it gets way better over time. So maybe they need to focus on helping people integrate faster and making those connections with the local community stronger. Think about things like mentorship programs or targeted language support, or even programs that show off the cool lifestyle and job opportunities that Atlantic Canada has.
So it's all about recognizing what makes each region special, and then finding solutions that actually fit right.
Exactly. And then in places like Toronto and Vancouver, where housing affordability is a huge problem, the focus needs to be on policies that actually tackle that issue head on. Maybe that means giving developers incentives to build more affordable housing, or setting up rental assistance programs, or even looking at those new co-living situations that are specifically for newcomers.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's about figuring out the pressure points in each area and being strategic. But is it all about changing policies, or is there a cultural side to this too?
Bernhard says it can't just be about the government coming in and fixing everything. He wants everyone to be involved, like the federal, provincial, and municipal governments all working together, along with employers, community organizations, and most importantly, everyday citizens.
So it's about creating a cultural shift, like a sense of welcome and support that goes way beyond just words on a page.
Exactly. It's about making Canada a place where immigrants really feel like they belong, like they can actually build a life here for themselves and their families.
Yeah, I get that. It's like the difference between just putting up with someone and actually making them feel like they're valued and included.
You got it. And that's where this whole idea of shifting from a refugee mindset to a global talent mindset comes in.
I've been thinking about that. Can you explain what that shift actually means?
Sure. Canada's always been great at offering refuge to people fleeing persecution, and that's something we should totally keep doing. But the report says that the type of immigrant coming to Canada is changing. We're seeing more and more highly skilled professionals now, people with fancy degrees who speak multiple languages. And they're choosing Canada because of its quality of life and the opportunities it offers.
So it's not just about providing a safe place anymore. It's about attracting and keeping people who can really contribute to Canada, to our economy, and to our society as a whole.
Exactly. And these people have choices. They could go to other developed countries that offer similar things. So Canada needs to up its game if it wants to be competitive.
It sounds as we need to move away from that come one, come all mentality and start being more strategic. We need to recognize what these highly skilled people need and what they're looking for.
Yeah, exactly. We need to understand what motivates them, what challenges they face, and what kind of support they need to actually do well here. It's not just about filling empty jobs. It's about recognizing the value that these people bring to our country.
That's a really important point. It's not just about what Canada can give to newcomers. It's about what newcomers can give to Canada too. It's got to be a two-way street.
I totally agree. If Canada can embrace this global talent mindset, it can really become a leader in the world, attracting the best and brightest minds to help us all succeed.
This conversation has been so insightful. We started out talking about all these skilled immigrants leaving, but honestly, I'm feeling kind of hopeful now.
Me too. Challenges can also be opportunities, and this is definitely a chance for Canada to take a look at itself, to try new things, and to become an even stronger and more welcoming country.
Well said. You mentioned earlier that the report doesn't say exactly how many skilled immigrants are leaving. Is there any way to know how big this problem really is and what could happen if it keeps getting worse?
It's hard to say exactly how many people are leaving because the report doesn't give us specific numbers, but it definitely makes it clear that this trend could really hurt Canada's economy in the future. Like, think about the labor shortages Canada's already dealing with, especially in those really important sectors. If we can't keep our skilled workers, those shortages are just going to get worse, which means longer wait times for things like healthcare, slower economic growth, and even, maybe Canada won't be as competitive globally.
Yeah, it's like we're building this house, but we're losing all the skilled people we need to finish it.
Yeah.
The carpenters, plumbers, electricians. And besides the economic stuff, I think there's got to be social and cultural consequences too.
For sure. Immigrants bring so much to the table, fresh ideas, new perspectives. They really make communities more vibrant. If we lose that, it would totally change Canada.
Yeah, we wouldn't be the same welcoming, multicultural country that we are now. It would be like a tapestry losing some of its threads. The whole picture would just be less complete. Okay, so we've talked about why people are leaving and how Canada needs to change its approach. But why should the average person listening to this care? What does this all mean for them?
This isn't just some theoretical policy thing. It affects everyone. If Canada can't attract and keep talented people, it's going to hurt our economy, our healthcare system, our ability to come up with new things. It even affects what kind of society we are.
Wow, it's like a domino effect. It all starts with individual people deciding to leave, but it ends up affecting the whole country.
Exactly. And that brings us to something really important that the report talks about: the emotional side of immigration.
You mean like that feeling of belonging, of being valued and really part of the community?
Yeah, exactly. Imagine coming to this new country, you've got all these skills and you're ready to go, but you also want to feel connected. You want to contribute. You want to build a life here. If that doesn't happen, if you always feel like an outsider, it can be really tough.
Yeah. It's like having a key to a house, but never really feeling like you're home.
That's a perfect way to put it. And I think Canada needs to really look in the mirror here. We say we're this welcoming, multicultural country, but are we really? Are we actually creating communities where newcomers feel like they belong, where they're not just tolerated, but they're celebrated, where their unique experiences are valued?
That's a really powerful question. It's not enough to just have the right policies. We need to actually create a culture of inclusivity.
Absolutely. And that's something we can all work on. We need to be aware of our own biases, reach out to newcomers in our communities, and support policies that promote inclusion and belonging.
It feels like this conversation has gone way beyond just immigration. It's about what kind of country we want to be, a country where everyone feels valued and has the chance to succeed.
I totally agree. It's about building a Canada where everyone is welcome, where diversity is seen as a strength, and where we all work together to make things better for everyone.
Wow. This has been a really eye-opening deep dive. We started with this kind of scary trend, but I'm leaving feeling hopeful and like I want to do something.
I'm glad to hear that. We need to keep talking about these things because I really think it can lead to a better Canada for all of us.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the problem, but what can our listeners actually do to help make things better?
Well, the first thing is to stay informed. Understand the issue, what's causing it, and what the solutions could be. Then talk about it with your friends, family, colleagues. The more people know about it, the more likely it is that things will actually change.
Yeah, knowledge is power. And besides talking about it, we can get involved in our communities, support organizations that are helping newcomers, push for policies that make housing more affordable, and make sure workplaces are inclusive.
Every little thing helps. Even just being friends with a newcomer, helping them figure out their new community, or connecting them with job opportunities can make a big difference.
This deep dive has totally changed how I think about skilled immigration in Canada. It's a really complex issue, but I'm feeling inspired to be part of the solution.
I'm so glad. This is a conversation that needs to keep going, and I really believe it can help us create a more prosperous and inclusive Canada.
That's what we're all about. And to everyone listening, we want to hear from you. What do you think Canada should do to keep skilled immigrants here? Share your thoughts with us on social media. Let's keep this conversation going.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep making a difference.